Welcome back. In lecture 11, we looked at managing knowledge and learning.
So we define knowledge, but we also emphasize the fact that organizations will facilitate learning and knowledge transformation through knowledge management. So knowledge management is really about how in an organization through different systems by using tools and using processes and structure, you will enable knowledge transformation. And we saw that knowledge was transformed from tacit to explicit, from explicit to tacit through a matrix that will actually lead to the constant renewal of the knowledge stock in the organization.
Taylorist assumptions were that the managers had all the knowledge. Anything that was to be known was known already by the managers. Post-bureaucracy assumes, on the other hand, that employees doing the job, meeting with obstacles or issues or maybe breakthroughs as they do the job, engaging with customers, they're going to have keen insights, and the organization will benefit through all of that knowledge learning that's taking place through organizational practices. And so it's about capturing that information as well and broadcasting or transmitting that throughout the organization so that it's captured as part of the organizational knowledge.
And so the idea is that if we consider knowledge as something that individuals do, like we learn, what the organization does is that it can facilitate the assimilation, the transmission of this knowledge. So an organization is, in a sense, and in learning terms, more than its individual components. And it can learn even if one person leaves. It can do the things that it used to do despite one person leaving. And so the idea is that if we consider an organization as a socio-technical system, people plus tools and processes and structures that help them to learn, we understand how organizational learning can happen. And when it happens, it means that this learning is shared across members and is embedded in the culture of the organization.
If we think about the importance, once again, of our current business context or organizational context, where things are changing so quickly, so rapidly, with the introduction of new technologies, but also with changing government policies and so on. So an organization needs to be constantly learning and adapting in order to flourish. And this can only happen if it has an adaptable culture as well, which is a knowledge learning culture where the assumptions are actually allowed to change through that new knowledge or learning that's taking place.
And that's what's called double loop learning. So we want to be able in an organization to do two things. To do regular ongoing single loop learning, and that means we just change marginally. We improve every day. That's a day-to-day practice of learning. We integrate new knowledge. We do things a little bit better every day. But then when it's needed, we need to be able to do what's called double loop learning, which is a change in the culture, in the assumptions, really doing things in a different way, disrupting the existing way of doing things. And that's captured with finding a balance between exploration and exploitation.
Yeah, so exploration is your research and development. It takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of resources just to be able to maintain researchers or scientists in labs to explore new ways of developing the products and coming up with new features and so on. It takes a lot. And so it can be a lot more economical and efficient for an organization to exploit the knowledge that it already has. So the product that it already has, just by tweaking it and refining that knowledge that already exists, it can be a more efficient way for the organization to learn and adapt.
But the difficulty if you don't do both is that one is more short-term, so it's economical. You'd save the big exploration thing, you save the big changes, but then you don't prepare for the future. So you need to be able to be efficient short-term and to have this short-term preoccupation while maintaining the long-term perspective where you will need to change, you will need to adapt, and you will need to bring new things.
Otherwise, sometimes organizations, out of arrogance, they might think they are already the best at doing what they do, and so they maintain with the product that they have, they just keep exploiting that product. Meanwhile, technology's changed and they're totally left behind.
And they don't see that happen because that stock of knowledge is not renewed. They don't see the new business model happening, and that's what's called a competency trap. So they are very competent to a degree in an existing world, but they don't adapt to the new world, and that's where our arrogance can be a really bad trap.
So in organizations today, then, we talk about the value of having structures and having systems in place, having the knowledge that the organization owns, its IP and so on, but then also being flexible through learning and creativity, constantly developing in order to keep pace with the changes in the environment.
And one way to do that is to have what's called network organization. So that will help with combining bureaucratic structure, which is the formal structure, and learning and creativity that can happen in the network. That's very connected to what we saw in lecture 10 around informal communication. So horizontal network connecting people, such as in communities of practice, and bringing them together to create new projects that can be then more structured. And that's this mix between bureaucracy and post-bureaucratic approach that can lead to both being able to exploit and to explore. Thank you.